and welcome back to the County Chat channel. Today, I'm going to be doing a little extra special episode here for the County Championship season that's just gone by, and it's a kind of a breakout players special, I guess maybe we'll call it. Just sort of looked at the season stats and all of the things that I usually do, and we're just looking at the players who kind of, to me, made a massive step up in their sort of not abilities, but maybe made a massive step up in their reputation and just sort of the general outlook of their career, I guess, going forward. So I've picked 5 players. It started off as a sort of totally just like a breakout players thing. Wasn't really thinking about batters, bowlers, all-rounders, whatever. But actually all of the players ended up being, to some degree, all-rounders. So I don't actually know what I'm going to title the video, whether or not it'll be sort of breakout all-rounders or just breakout players. So yeah, it'll be a little bit of screen sharing. I did a little bit of like research using the great website that is Wayback Machine to basically find their statistics from like last year to work out sort of how much of a difference they'd had. Again, the kind of things that I enjoyed doing to kind of make these sort of videos. Yeah, they're not the particular. I feel like breakout players, it almost gives the impression of like they're players you might never heard of. I think a lot of them are players may have heard of. It's just kind of, I think, how good of a season they really had maybe was just sort of a bit of a surprise in a way. So anyway, I guess kicking it off, we're going to be starting with our first player. It's George Hill, the kind of Yorkshire bowler, bowling all-rounder, I guess, again, as I mentioned. But yeah, he had his debut season in Division 1. We'll do a little bit of screen sharing throughout this. But anyway, he had a Division 1 debut season this year with Yorkshire. And again, I was very bright and optimistic and the outlook beforehand of looking at Yorkshire's team as him being one of the most important players. But I think I massively underestimated maybe what is his biggest attribute, is that he had an unbelievable year with the ball. He got called up for the England Lions, played in the England Lions tour this summer as well. But the amount of wickets he must have taken, I think he took 51 in the county championship and then took quite a few in the England Lions game he played against India. But it's just one of those. He had a massively brilliant year, giving him his flowers. So going into this year, he was averaging about 33 with the bat and 26 with the ball, with a 2,300 runs roughly with the bat and 79 wickets. And then after this year, I mean, the batting arguably took a backward step, but admittedly he was facing a lot better bowling in Division 1. But anyway, now averages 30 with the bat, so it's gone down a little bit. But the wickets is the kind of crazy thing. He went from 79 wickets at 26 to 130 wickets at 22. He just unbelievably dominated the sort of wicket-taking tallies. I'm going to bring up my screen now. I think it's worth looking just at his bowling. He didn't have the best year with the bat for him, maybe. Admittedly, generally, I think he had a pretty good year. But here he is, George Hill, a little thing for him there. But yeah, he averaged 16 with the ball, or 16.7, so we're closer to 17, but an economy of 2.5. Super low strike rates. I mean, I think maybe they protected him on the overs front just because of his being sort of still a pretty young player, but he had just an unbelievable season bowling. It was genuinely impressive to watch and really cool to watch, really, because he just, I mean, throughout the year, it just felt like when they needed the wicket, he went out and took them. And he was just brilliant. Again, one of the players that when we did our England Lions, or my England Lions squad, I was shocked that he wouldn't go. Again, a bit of more of a medium pacer, or sort of medium fast, shall we say, bowler who didn't make the cut for what the England sort of squad are looking like for the current season, the current sort of Ashes series down under. But I thought he was a player who should make it as a no-brainer. I think if you take 50 first-class Division 1 wickets in a season, whilst being a very handy batter at sort of a, say, 6 through 8 in an order, I can't really understand why you wouldn't want a player like that. But anyway, he had an unreal season in his first year in Division 1. And I think I gave a bit of respect for people who made that step up, especially young players, which I guess kind of perfectly segues onto the next player I've got written down here. A little bit of homer bias here, maybe, but I think the numbers sort of speak for themselves. But James Coles, Sussex's own sort of batting all-rounder, another all-rounder, as I mentioned. He, again, had his debut season, Sussex and Yorkshire were the teams that went up this year. And James Coles was just brilliant. I mean, he was just everything you kind of want. If Sussex would have wanted him to be, he was batting in the middle order and bowling incredibly handy left-hand spin. You know, even sometimes coming on before Jack Carson, who's one of the best off-spinners in the country. So again, I think he just went on leaps and bounds. So again, doing the kind of pre and post stats, if you will. So pre-2025, going into the season, again, bearing in mind all of the stats he'd had before this were in Division 2, which I think there is a big drop-off in standard, especially of bowler. But James Coles, before the season, had scored 1,872 runs at 36 and taken 37 wickets at an average of 53. He massively bumped all of those up. So he scored over 1,000 runs this season, 2,920, and got his average up to 38. And then with wickets, he went all the way up to 57 wickets at an average of 46. So the wickets really went down in averages. Again, I'll do a little bit of screen sharing, but James Coles, throughout the year, just kind of consistently showed himself to be one of the better players just in Division 1 cricket, full stop. We'll have a look at these the bowling stats first. Let's have a gander at Coles here. Yeah, so he took 20 wickets at an average of 33. Bear in mind, pretty much all the people around him here are sort of frontline bowlers, bowlers who bowl a hell of a lot of overs. Even Jack himself, the other Sussex spinner, only 6 wickets ahead of Jay Colsey, who was also one of the sort of top batters in the country. And with that in mind, we'll have a look at his season with the ball, if this plays ball, speaking of. But yeah, James Coles, again, it just sort of felt like any time Sussex needed it, and again, I was watching a lot of James Coles being in the situation I was, being a Sussex fan, that is, and he just consistently got runs. So here, where did he rank? He ranked 7th in runs out of everyone, whilst also being a very handy bowling option. Yeah, 400s, 450s, average of pretty much 47 and 1,000 runs in his first year in Division 1 cricket. Again, another player who missed out on England Lions selection status. He did actually get a contract over, I think, in SA20. So whether or not it was a bit of an ECB, we're like, let this young lad get his money. Could be that. I hope it's that, because aside from that, I really can't understand him not going down under. He seems to play the short ball very well, and all of the things you'd kind of want from one of your best young players in the country, to my eye at least. But anyway, yeah, James Coles, I think, again, calling him a breakout player is maybe a bit of an overshoot, because I think if you know your county cricket and you know your English domestic cricket, that James Coles is a really massive talent. I think he's still only 21, and he's already scored, nearly 3,000 first-class runs and nearly 60 first-class wickets as a 21-year-old. So his future is incredibly bright. Long may it continue in Sussex colours, selfishly, I guess. But yeah, anyway, another great breakout season from a really great young player in English cricket. And then carrying on with, again, sort of batting all-rounders or all-rounders in general who were young and made an impressive sort of start to their career. Kellaway, Ben Kellaway, enough without further ado. And again, English cricket, Welsh cricket. Ben Kellaway is a Welsh sort of export from Glamorgan, and was a big part of Glamorgan's move through from Division 2 to Division 1. So next year will be a big deal for him, I'm sure, for sort of moving through. I guess if out of anyone who I've done on this list, he is probably the most obvious breakout, in the sense of he was like, had barely really played before this year and then went on to have a really, really good year. And the kind of pre-post numbers will show that. Before 2025, and again, according to the Wayback Machine use of ESPN Cricket Info, he had 80 runs at an average of 10 with the bat, and 12 wickets at an average of 27. So the wickets are a pretty standard thing. But for what he went on to do with the bat, I think you can see why it's a funny thing seeing 80 runs at an average of 10. Post 2025, his average is, he scored 893 runs, or he's scored that many in his career, so 810 runs, say, this year, at an average of 39. And then with the wickets, he took another 25, so got his wickets total up to 37 at an average of 30. So the kind of average level with the bowling kind of stayed at pretty similar to what he'd been. But yeah, let's have a look at him and have a look at where he stacked up in a lot of the sort of leaderboards in Division 2. But he was really, really impressive. We'll have a look at the batting first, because that was where he really shone. Kellaway. Here he is. Whilst playing in 3 less games because of the sort of other commitments, I think, and maybe picked up an injury throughout the season, he got average, record rank, and sort of therefore he was 20th in runs throughout Division 1, but an average of 54, so obviously quite a lot higher than the players around him. 200s, 450s, but again, for a player who'd gone into the season with 80 first-class runs, it's a massive, massive breakout. Scored a brilliant 181 through the season as well. And then if we go on to what he was doing with the ball, again, if this will play ball, here we are. that Kellaway had a remarkably good year with the ball as well. 25 wickets at 32 was a really important spin option for Glamorgan. Of course, the kind of massive thing with Ben Kellaway, which I guess is sort of somewhat easy to forget, I've forgotten to mention it at points, is that he bowls both right arm off break and slow left arm. It's just a remarkable sort of thing to be able to do, a really cool thing to be able to do. And also incredibly valuable. I think Joe Root came out and said it in a 100 interview around the 100 about how impressive it is, but also how difficult it is to face, because he changed within a set bowling at Joe Root from left to right hand. Yeah, it's just really cool, a really amazing story, and really cool for Wales cricket as well, having a real amazing young talent in that, who's such a unique option with that right arm and left arm spin. A long may it continue. He is the only player, I believe, on this England Lions tour. He did make it way down. I think his sort of talent is too obvious to miss in a way. And I'm glad he made it, because he's well deserving. So I guess he's probably the most fundamental breakout star in a way, because of the fact that he had literally, as I say, 80 first class runs. I'm sure if he listens to this, he won't be happy for me to keep just saying over and over he had 80 first class runs. But he is now long onto his way, and he will continuously keep going up and up with their batting, because he looked incredibly impressive. And I'm excited to see him in Division 1 with Glamorgan's reintroduction. Now, this is probably the one where it's maybe the most of an outside shout for being a breakout. But I think it's because of maybe the perception of him is why I looked at it. But anyway, Rehan Ahmed, I love a little less conversation. Rehan Ahmed, he, before this season, I think a lot of people, especially England fans, would have probably considered him like a proper all-rounder or a spin bowling all-rounder. I think this year with Leicestershire and the part he played in their title charge at the start of this season really made people realise, oh wait, maybe his batting has been underrated this whole time. And I think that's the case. I think he kind of switched the perception. I think he went from being seen as a bowling all-rounder, and I think now he has to be seen as a batting all-rounder. Just because of the sheer volume of runs, but also just the way he did it, and kind of very much in the sort of attitude of Bazball, I guess. He was a very aggressive and belligerent player and scored a lot of runs whilst doing it. So it was kind of a perfect thing for the sort of ECB to look at, I'm sure. But anyway, going into this season, he had about 1,200 runs at an average of under 30 at 29. And then with wickets, he had about 48 at an average of 46. So kind of neither that impressive, but for a young player who's very good at both, I think a lot of people were excited to see where it went. And if you would ask me, I think I'd probably expected the bowling to really have taken its strides. But it was the batting that really flew on, especially. But after this season, he's now at about 2,020 runs at an average of 34. So a bump up of about 5 with the average. And then wickets, he took another 30 wickets to go on to 78 wickets at an average of 37. I realise all of this is just a lot of numbers. I think, to be honest, I enjoyed it as much as anything, just finding out what these players' big seasons had meant to their sort of statistics moving forward. Let me know if you found that interesting, because it did take me more time than I'd probably like to admit. But anyway, having a little look at Rehan Ahmed, again, he had some situations where he was playing other cricket, so didn't play in all the games himself. Kind of importantly, he scored 500s. I think before this year he'd had maybe 2 or even 1. But he scored 500s, 160 runs at an average of just 51-ish. And again, that strike rate up near 100, quite a lot higher than a lot of people in and around him, whilst also batting at 3. So he was really taking on the new ball bowling often. And again, was a huge part of like Leicestershire's start to the season, where they just looked unbeatable, really. They just consistently were just smashing teams around, and he was like a real linchpin of that side. His bowling was almost sort of equally impressive. I realise I never went off the bowling of Ben Kellaway's stats, so hopefully we get back to it. Yeah, nice. But Rehan Ahmed, his bowling, he didn't actually bowl maybe as much as you might expect, but when he did bowl, it was incredibly effective and a lot more economical than maybe previous sort of opinions of him would have been. But anyway, an average of 19, an economy of 2.66 and 23 wickets in an incredibly impressive, again, Leicestershire side, who are, again, another player who was a big part of their team going up a division, and I'll be really excited to see up in Division 1, because I think it will be a real test and a real good test for his young self and young career that he's in. But Rehan Ahmed made a massive step forward this year. And again, maybe it's a step forward rather than a breakout, but again, that's just the semantics of my own video. But Rehan Ahmed, to me, made a massive change to maybe the perception of him as a cricketer. Anyway, shout out to Rehan Ahmed. Anyway, finally, the sort of the fifth player for this sort of top 5 breakout players, I think is maybe the most obvious one. I think probably, again, if you're right into your county cricket, you'd be well aware this is maybe where I'd be going with it. But it's Saif Zaib. I'm maybe butchering that pronunciation, but he had one of the craziest sort of upswings in a career. I think before this season, I think he was this sort of age 27, as they say in America. But he was 26 going into the season, turned 27 in the season. But it's not like he's a really young cricketer. Like, he'd played a lot of cricket before this, and I think a lot of people had known him as a real talent, and that he'd maybe not delivered on the talent that people expected him from him until this year, because he was unbelievable. He was an absolute machine with the runs, and actually took more wickets than I'd realised. Because again, I think calling him an all-rounder was a bit of a push, but he had actually a really good year with the ball. So again, it kind of feeds into, is this an all-rounders list sort of thing? But pre-2025, Saif Zaib had scored 2,320 runs at an average of 26 and taken 34 wickets at an average of 41. He now, at the end of this season, has scored 3,884 runs at an average of 35. So he's gone up 9 average points in one season, so in 14 matches, which is just mind-boggling. He's also scored near enough 1,500 runs in, again, a 14-game season. His average going up 9 runs by this point of his career is also, just for someone who spends way too much time looking at stats and numbers, is absolutely crazy. Like, that is just really not an easy thing to do unless you average what he ended up averaging, which is up in the sort of 60s or near enough 70s this year, and just pure weight of runs. But yeah, I think I had not really clocked he had a really good year with the ball as well. But anyway, I guess he'll probably stay at Northamptonshire, because he'd said a massive part of his, him improving had been Darren Lehman, and just the sort of general confidence and in selection, and being in the class, being at 5 every kind of game. Because that's the other thing, he wasn't batting up the order, he was scoring these runs from the middle order. So Northampton stayed in Division 2. So what I'm sort of getting at is he won't be going up to Division 1 like these other players I'd mentioned from Division 2. But maybe after next year, I think Northampton will probably be one of the teams to beat going into next year. But I think him not getting on the England Lions tour, again, is sort of a matter for another video that I did. But he just sort of epitomises a real late career resurgence, and why, especially in batters, I think that really late on in your career, you can have these massive upswings. And I've used Mike Hussey as an example until, everyone gets bored of it. But I really do use it, is that, someone like him, if he just comes to his own at 30, why shouldn't he be able to be selected for England just because he's 27 and maybe wasn't on their books before this? Again, it's just my opinion on how selection should work, and that's a whole nother matter. But anyway, it's time to look at his jaw-dropping stats, if we're honest. And I don't need to find his name because they just go right up to the top. So yeah, 1,425 runs at an average of 65, say. Again, strike rate is up there. So again, he kind of does fall into the kind of mould of, new age of cricketers of trying to score a bit quicker. And again, 600, 750s, passing 50 13 times in 23 innings it's just mind-boggling, isn't it? So he just had a ridiculous year, and yeah, long may it continue for his sake. And then the sort of thing with the bowling, I guess I'll quickly show it because I was just surprised by it more than anything. Division 2 bowling is 13 wickets at an average of 25, but on also an economy of 2.59. So he bowled some very handy over for Northampton, nearly 130 there. And again, maybe he'll bowl more next year if they kind of like it as an option. But he's kind of part of a few sort of batting all-rounder spinners that they have at Northamptonshire. Anyway, I guess overall, it's just a sort of, these are players who get some, Ben Kellaway got that selection for the England Lions, but the other 4 didn't. And I guess, actually, now I'm questioning if Rehan Ahmed is not in a squad. So maybe just the other 3. But it sort of just in a general sense, I think it's just giving some flowers to these players who had just unbelievably good years. They should be all very proud of themselves. I'm sure they very much are, and they don't need some small YouTuber telling them that. But I think Saif Zaib is the kind of perfect one to finish off, just in the sense of how well he played and how cool of a sort of story it was. Going from averaging 26 before this season as a batter really is like, oh no, you're kind of near the end of your tether really. And then going on to at the end of the same season be averaging 35, like north of 35. It's just a cool news story. And yeah, really cool thing for his career as a great resurgence. Anyway, not really much more to add than that on this one. Again, this was kind of just a quick episode. I was quite enjoying just looking at players who'd had particularly big years this year. So again, whether or not it's a sort of breakout stars, maybe they're just the top 5 all-rounders from this year. Either way, I hope you enjoyed watching. And yeah, if you're still watching at this point, leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. It really helps sort of grow the channel and get people looking at it who might be enjoying this kind of content. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and peace.